And I'm gonna do this, I think, a little bit faster than normal because it's a bigger sort of project, but pause me at any point you have questions. I have done two things so far. I've done three things so far. One, I deleted the fact that it's a Git repository, so I didn't accidentally overwrite Prime's code. That's why it looks like everything's new here. Two, I did npm install, so I already installed everything. Three, I switched it from using NodeMon for watching the server to just using Node. And I got rid of NodeMon as a dependency, and that fixed the whole having to do npm install twice thing. I actually fixed that for the starter repo too, so other cohorts won't run into that problem. Um, let's see. I believe I need a database called Garden. So let me go ahead and create a database called Garden. Oh, that already exists. Let me delete it. And we'll create a new one called Garden. And then I'll make a new query file called Garden. And I'll pull over all my SQL into there. Go ahead and make the table plants and make a couple of rows of sample data. And there it is. It's beautiful. And then the next thing to do is npm run server and npm run client. And we'll open it up. And we see whatever I'm typing here shows up. And if I add it, it shows up here. If I refresh the page, the new stuff goes away. That tells me all this is happening client side. So let's take a look. Source has the React application. Public has the static things, and that's true in general. The public folder here with Vite and React, this is where we put any images or assets. If we put them in the public folder, they're really easy to import into our code. And then server has our Express app. So for base mode, we're going to improve upon it. Right now, everything's client side. We're going to turn it into a full stack app using React, Redux, and Redux Saga. So we want to add the Redux logger middleware to the project. And so that's either in the index.js or it's going to be in like if we have a Redux folder or a store.js. So here we go. And we're missing a lot of boilerplate. So what I would do is I would pick up a previous repo and copy the code. So I'm just going to clone down the lecture repo from yesterday to use. So now I have yesterday's lecture code because I don't have the boilerplate memorized. And now I can start kind of copying over the boilerplate I need. I'm going to have these open side by side on my big monitor here. So let's see. I already have a line that looks like this one, but imports a couple more things. So I'm just going to replace the existing line. I'm going to grab the rest of our middleware, or sorry, the rest of our imports. My bad, not middleware. And then I'm going to put them to use. So I'm working on adding the Redux logger middleware to the project. And the way I do that is within my store, after I combine reducers, I'm going to apply middleware. And I'm going to give it the middleware of the logger that I imported. So now, hopefully, if I add in a new plant, I can see my Redux logger. So that worked. Step 1 is done. Add Redux logger to the project. Add Redux Saga to the project. I kind of cheated and just added all the imports at the same time. So I want to add Redux Saga to the project. The get API plants route is already written to send an array of plant objects as its response. Obtain and render the array to plant list component when it loads. You'll need to make a Saga function in store.js whose job is to get the data from the server and then put it into the plant list reducer. So we're told I already have an endpoint that will send me back the plants. And I can test that out if I want in Postman. It's localhost. What is our server running on? 5001 slash API/plants. Will return me the list of plants. So I know that's what I'm going to receive from my GET request. So I want to write an Axios function to make that request and then save the data to my reducer. And I want to make that request in a Saga. So let me finish setting up the Saga boilerplate and then add in a Saga to make that GET request. So I am going to need a root Saga where I'm going to register all my Saga functions. And then I am going to take that root Saga and I'm going to give it to my Saga middleware. Const Saga middleware is equal to create Saga middleware. So I run it once to instantiate it. And then I'm going to take that Saga middleware and I'm going to tell it to run our root Saga. And that's the boilerplate for Sagas. Now I actually need a Saga. And I'm going to call it fetch plants. Fetch is the verb we usually use for make a GET request. It doesn't need to take any inputs. And I want to make an Axios call. So I'm going to do yield plants. I'm going to declare a variable called plants, or a variable. Let plants. I'm going to have it equal the result of what I get back after I wait for axios.get / API / plants. And this tells me I need Axios, so I'm going to import it. And then when I get that back, well, let me do a try block. I want to try doing this stuff. And if it's not successful, I'll catch the error and I'll console log air fetching plants. And the air. But assuming we're on the happy path and my get call works, I get back something like this as my response.data. I'm going to console log it for now to make sure it's working. And then I'm going to need to dispatch an action to update the reducer with our plant list. And now I need to register this saga with my root saga by doing yield, take every. I need to come up with an action type and then give it the function name of my saga. And the action type I'm going to come up with is probably just fetch plants. So before I go trying to dispatch an action to update my plant list here, I'm going to try and trigger this saga. I'm going to try and dispatch an action with fetch plants to make this saga run and make my Axios call, and then look and see if my console log shows up. So I'm going to dispatch an action to fetch plants, probably right when my module loads, because I want to get them on load. So I'm going to go back to my client-side code here. And in the plant list, I am going to use effect. And, oh, they gave me a hint. Dispatch an action to request the plant list from the API. So here I'm going to dispatch an action. And the type is going to be fetch plants. And there's no payload needed. I'm not sending any data to the Saga. I'm just triggering it. So when this component loads, my plant list component, which is somewhere on the screen, we're going to run our use effect, which sends this action, dispatches this action. Our root Saga listens for actions. It has one that matches, so it runs our plant list function. Our plant list Saga function is going to try to go to the API and get the plants, and then console log the plants. So let me come here and refresh and see if that happens. Nope. Uncaught error. Before running a Saga, you must mount the Saga middleware on the store using apply middleware. Oh, I forgot a step. That's right. The Saga middleware needs to be middleware for Redux, so we're also going to include it along with our logger and apply middleware. Now, boom. If I localhost 5173, just completely load the page fresh. We are going and getting the list of plants, I think. Well, actually, I didn't write any code to populate it. So let me check my console log. That's my real test. My real test is, does this console log show up? And it does. And it has data inside. So I am successfully triggering that Saga to go fetch the plants from the server when my plant list component loads. All right. That tells me I have the plants. So this isn't quite the plants. I want to do, I'm going to call this result. And then I'm going to say, I want to dispatch an action to update my plant list reducer. And since I'm in a Saga, instead of saying dispatch, I'm going to say put. I'm going to yield this because it could take a moment. And the type is going to be something. And the payload needs to be my result.data, since I want to actually get the data from it. And then I gotta see, okay, they already gave me an action type here to add a new plant. But I don't want to add a new plant. I want to just completely like replace what's there with what's from the server. So I'm going to add in a new case. For set plants. And I don't like calling this plant. I would probably call it plant list because that's my convention, but I'm going to stick with the convention that's already here. And in this case, where I want to set the whole thing, I'm going to return, and whatever I return will become the new value. So I want to return action.payload. Whatever you send me, that's the new list. Now, hopefully, we'll be able to get the Redux state and have it show up. But the only way I'm going to know for sure is, since this is the default for our reducer, and on page load, I'm doing this and getting what's essentially the same data and replacing what's in our reducer with it, it would be hard to tell. 1 rose, 2 tulip, 3 oak. If I replace that with 1 rose, 2 tulip, 3 oak, that would, I'd have no way of knowing if it's working or not. If I refresh, is this coming from the database? Is this coming from my get call and then I'm updating my reducer? Or is it just the initial values that we're putting in there? And so that I can tell, I'm going to change the initial value to just be an empty array and get rid of this starting array. Now, if I come back here and I refresh, in theory, I should see the data coming from the server, but something's wrong. So let's go take a look at that. I created an action to listen for, but I never actually set it on my dispatch. So now that I'm dispatching an action of set plant, we should update our reducer. So let me come back here, and it worked. If I refresh, I see all the plants. It looks the same as before, but now what's happening is when I load the page, I'm loading the plant list component in app.jsx. We show the garden component, and the garden component shows the plant list component. The plant list component, when it loads, its use effect runs, and it dispatches this action. That action is triggering this Saga function to run. The Saga function is doing our get, and then taking the data it gets back from the server and dispatching this action, set plant, which is causing our plant list reducer to update to have the same value as what we got back from the server, since that was the payload. And that means when the page loads, I'm very quickly going and getting the data from the server and showing it. And I don't know if it shows up on screen when I refresh, but for like the briefest of seconds, split seconds, this area is blank, and then it fills in. It just takes the time of that server call to fill it out. I want to pause there for questions. That was already a lot that we covered. Anyone got anything that they want to talk over or want me to go into with more detail with that? Are you all just like whoosh? Or are you all like, yeah, that makes total sense. I have no questions.
Of course, we never have questions during
Totally. Yeah.
the end.
So are you in that? It makes sense now, but I don't know if I'd be able to do it on my own. Is that kind of where you're at with it?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, cool. That's right where you should be. That's totally okay. It's just gonna take repetition. All right. So let's see. Add Redux Saga to the project. Done. The get plants route is already written to send the array of plants objects as its response. We are now obtaining and rendering that array in the plant list component when it loads. Nice. We did that by making a Saga function in store.js whose job was to get the data from the server. That's this one. Then put it in the plant list reducer. And that's what this line is doing. We're dispatching another action, which goes and puts it in the reducer. All right. Now for step 3, add all of the plant fields to the plant form to allow adding a new plant to the database. The server side for this code already exists in the post API plants route. So let's go take a look. We know our database is rocking way more fields than just name and ID. It's got kingdom, clade, order, family, subfamily, and genus. So if we want the ability to add a new plant, we also want fields for that. And we're told the post route already is set up. So let's go look at the post route over in our router. So our post route is indeed expecting us to send values for all of those things. So it's expecting us to send an object with a name property, a kingdom property, a clade property, and so on. So I'm going to test out this post route in Postman. So this is a post and same URL. And I'm told I need these things. I'm just going to go collect them all. And I'm going to add a body to my post. And the type is raw JSON. And we're going to do an object. And these are the names of the fields. And each one needs to be wrapped in double quotes because it's JSON. And then each one needs a value. And when you get close to being done with something like that, it is kind of useful to come up with like real sample data and maybe go check like Wikipedia or something. But for now, I'm just going to add some junk data so there's some text in every field, since every field is a text field, just to see if it shows up. I'm going to send that off, and I see 201 created, which makes me think that pre-written post route worked. So let me go back to my database and refresh, and I see it showed up. So I know this is how I want to package the data for my post request. So let's start by giving me some input fields. I believe that's on the plant form. And I have one field. No, I have two fields. I have a submit button and I have an input button. So I'm going to add a bunch more input buttons. Let's see. I have one for name. I need one for, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they are not going to be named this. They're going to be named Kingdom, so on and so forth. There we go. All right. Now they've chosen to do an interesting thing here that there's lots of different ways you could do this. You could have a new use state variable for each input field. That's the way we've classically done it. They're doing one use state variable and they're treating it as an object. That means I probably want hmm. Thinking through the best way to do this. With the one they gave me, there was an empty name here. And as we type, it runs this function. And this function is going to set plant to be an object. What object? A new object, but it's going to copy everything that's already in there. And then either add a field called name if it's missing, or change the field called name to be what we typed. And so if we continue with this pattern, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to add a placeholder here for each of my new things. So let's see, there's going to be, I think, 6 of them. There's going to be one for kingdom, one for clade, one for order. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. When I went to high school, it was phylum. King Phil came over for grandma's spaghetti, was how we remembered it. So this way, we don't have a bunch of use state variables. We just have one that's an object. We start off all of the fields as blank so that they show up as blanks on the screen. And then on each of them, we're going to run the handle name change function, and we're going to copy this same idea. We're going to do one for each of the 6 we added. But in this case, I see. They called this handle name change. So they're not reusing the function. We would copy the whole function to follow their pattern, but we would rename it. So handle name change, handle kingdom change. Will set my plant to be a new object that's exactly what it was before, but we're going to change what's in the kingdom field. Same thing for the next one. And the next one. And the next one. And looks like I need 2 more. And the next one. And with this much copy and paste, there's a very good chance of making an error. In fact, let me get these in the same order that the input fields are. So subfamily and genus. It's very possible I neglected to update something. So I don't like this pattern. I would prefer to just have a new use state variable for each input field rather than a new function for each input field. But this is a handy thing to know about. So uh, here for each of these, I'm just going to have them run their appropriate function. All right. I want to pause there to ask about questions or what we've done so far in terms of adding 6 more input fields, reusing this big variable, but making it an object rather than the way we classically do it, where we might have something like let name, set name, equal use state. Let kingdom, set kingdom, equal use state. This is kind of the way we've always done it before, and I kind of prefer it as a pattern. Here, they're just making the whole thing one big object. And then as we type, we're running functions that will smartly update the object. They're going to replace it with a new object, which is a copy of everything the old object had, but also change one particular field. In this case, change the name field. In this case, change the kingdom field. In this case, change the clade field. Any questions about what we've done here or this kind of different way of going about it?
With the way that it's set up now, with the one larger object and then the different functions for each one, is that useful, say, if we were going to break each object down into its own like component in its own like little file?
Yeah, that would be a useful time to do it. I think another advantage of doing it, and I think why they're doing it, is now when we're going to go send the data, it's already prepackaged. We just have to send new plant, and it's already packaged up. It's already this object. So I think that's the big advantage out of this. But yeah, there are definitely lots of situations where this might be worth it. Also, I think just depending on the way people's brains think, this might make more sense. I find it a little more confusing. Does anyone like, I really love this? Because some people do prefer it. It's definitely a preference thing, and that's okay. Yeah, it's too new for y'all. But yeah, I think that when you want to do that in separate files, that's another good use for it. All right. Now, originally we'd been hard coding on the client a list of plants, and that was the default for our reducer. I deleted that. When we were hard coding it there, we needed the ID to come from the front end. Now that we're talking to the database, we're going to let the database be in charge of the ID. So I'm not going to have it as a field in my use state variable. There's no input field for it. And I'm not going to have it in my add plant function. Instead, when I click submit and I run the add new plant function, I'm going to prevent default, and then I'm going to dispatch add plant. Right now, what this is doing is it's triggering a reducer to add a new plant to the reducer. I'm shortcutting things. I'm cutting the cycle short. I am essentially right now, if we had plant form and somebody submits the form, we're just going and updating our data on the front end only in our reducer. And then it's going to show up in our plant list. But it's a lie because it never makes it to the database. So what I want to do is I want to update things. So when I dispatch, when I click the button, it doesn't just get added to the reducer here and show up on the page right away. Instead, it's going to trigger a Saga, and the Saga will update the database. And then my fetch Saga will ask the database for the updated list. And then we'll update the reducer with the updated list. So that's going to be my plan. So let me see where that leaves us with the review. Add all the plant fields to the plant form for allowing a new plant to the database. The server-side code for this already exists in post API plants route. Nice. They don't say to make it work, but I feel like that's implied. So let's make it work. So right now, when I click the button, we dispatch add plant. That triggers my reducer to update. I don't want it to trigger my reducer. So I'm going to change it to post plant. And then I'm going to go make a Saga that posts the plants. Function, post plant. And I'm leaving this singular because I'm posting one plant, and this plural because I fetch all the plants. In my mind, that makes sense. In your mind, it may make more sense to just keep everything pluralized, and that's totally fine. I'm going to register this in my root Saga. Yield take every. I need an action type. And then the Saga that'll run. And the action type is going to be the one I decided to dispatch here, post plant. So now when I click submit and I dispatch post plant and I give it my new plant, which is already packaged up, it should run my post plant function. Cool. I forgot to say that this takes in an action. It's not going to be used in that one, but in this one, it definitely will. In fact, I'll leave it off of that one. Here, I'm going to try doing some cool stuff. And if it fails, I'm going to catch the error. And I will console log error posting a new plant. And what I'm going to try is I'm going to try doing my Axios post call. So yield Axios post /API/plants. And then the data is going to be, I want to package it up so it looks like this, what I figured out. Things have a label of kingdom, name, clade, order, family, subfamily, genus. But because I already chose those same names here and it's already prepackaged, I can just dispatch the action dot, or not dispatch, I can post the action dot payload and it should be correct. So let's try that. Let's see if it works. Let's go ahead and put in B, 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 and add a plant. I see my post plant fired with my payload. Let me go check my database. It showed up. I'm going to go one step further in confirming. I am going to, I'm going to put some labels on these input fields so I know what I'm working with. And this one would be Kingdom. Clade. Order. Family. Subfamily. And genus. All right, so I got some names. Now I'm going to put in distinct data in order. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I should see them show up with those things in my database. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now I know all the data is coming from the right field on the form and going to the right field in the database. I also probably want my input fields to clear out when I'm done. So after I dispatch the event, I'm going to reset my plant variable. Set plants to be this empty object again. That way, the values of all of them reset. So if I submit a new plant, the field starts out empty again. All right. So I know my form is working. My fields have labels. They're still not the prettiest, but that's fine. I'm not worried about CSS on this one. When I put things in, LMNOPQR, the data shows up in the database in the right place, and the fields clear out. That tells me everything's working. Now all I need to do is, after I post, I need to do a get. After I post the data to the database, I want to fetch the new data from the database and refresh what's on the screen. And I can do that by saying, after I post, go ahead and run our fetch plant saga. And that's going to look like yield put. I'm going to dispatch an action in order to run that saga. And the action I'm going to dispatch will have a type of the type needed to run our fetch plant saga, which is fetch plants. Now, whenever I add something new in, Z, 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 and I post it, when we get done posting, we go fetch the new plant list and we display it. And here we're only displaying the names of them, but it's working out. We're not asked to make the display part pretty. All right, so that was add all the plant fields to the plant form to allow adding a new plant to the database. The server-side code for this already exists in the API plans route. Nice. Now we want to add a delete button for each plant to allow it to be removed from the database. We already have a delete route written. So we can test out the delete route. And then we need to give it an ID. So I'm going to delete number 4, the one with all A's. We get back in OK. I'll go back here and refresh, and it's deleted. Nice. In fact, I might get rid of 6, 7, 8 as well, just to clear things up. So I know that this is what my delete Axios call will need to look like. So in order to have a delete button, I actually need something to show up here with a delete button on it. So I do need to do a little bit of front end work for that. So in my plant list, rather than just taking the whole object, turning it into a string and dumping it there, I might want to do a table. And I'm going to do a table head, where I have a table row, where I have some table head cells. And I'm going to want one for all 7 of my database columns, everything but ID. I want one for name. I want one for kingdom. I want one for Claude. I want one for order. And one for family. And one for subfamily. And then one for genus. And then I need a table body. And I'm going to make these capital just so it looks nice. And on the table body, I want to map over what I get back. So I'm going to do some JavaScript here. And I'm going to take my Redux state, which I'm going to rename plant list. I'll just rename it plants. And I'm going to do a plants.map. And then my callback function is going to take each plant one at a time and return something that looks like this, a table row. And that table row is going to have table data cell. And it's going to have one for each of my table data headers. So I'm going to need 7 of them. And I'm going to need plant.name. And that needs to be a variable. So I'm going to put that in curly brackets. And on the row itself, I'm going to want key equals plant.id, since we have a list of things. And essentially, I'm going to go ahead and fill these all in and just change it from name to the various things. Kingdom, Claude, order. Oop, I don't want caps here because they're the actual property names. Family, subfamily, and genus. And now everything is broken. So where did I go wrong? Plants.map is not a function. That tells me plants is not what I think plants is. That tells me plants is not the list I thought it was. So we're going and getting plants. And when we do plants.map, we're told map is not a function. So that tells me I don't know what plants is.
You
So
have to do store dot and the name of the reducer.
Oh, you got it, my friend. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Store dot, like second set of eyes every single time. Dot plant list. Thank you. There we go. All right. Refresh. I am not seeing the list of plants. I'm seeing the table headers, but nothing in the table body.
The table body doesn't need to be plants dot name and plants dot kingdom.
So when I map over the plants array, I should be getting a individual
that need
plant
an
object.
S on the end or no?
I don't think this one does. Because the plants array is going to have a bunch of plant objects in it. And I'm going to look at each plant object in the array one at a time and return this for each plant object. I think I might just need the return. All right, so there's a bunch of stuff with names. But what about the rest? Was it not called Kingdom? That's the row. That's the data. What was it actually called in the database when we did our get? Oh. Maybe for this one, our get. No, it's returning. I got it. It's only returning the name and the ID. So I'm kind of doing this wrong. I think they probably did just want name and ID there. So you can post everything, but you only show the name and the ID. Okay, I can do that. I will just get rid of the other rows. There we go. So now I can add a new thing. AA, BB, CC, DD, EE, FF, GG. The name will show up. The whole thing gets added to the database. And then we'll add a delete button next to each of these. So let me add in another table head. And let me add in a button that's going to be delete. And when I click this, I want to run a helper function that's going to dispatch. In fact, I might be able to just dispatch from here. I can probably just dispatch an action of type, we'll say delete plant. And the payload will be the plant ID. So whenever I click that, Oh, I didn't like there. Oh. There you go. I need to give it an actual function, not tell it to run a function. Button cannot appear as a child of table row. Oh, I need to put it inside of table data. There you go. So now it's in a cell. All right. Now when I click this, I'll dispatch an action of type delete plant, and the payload will be the ID of the plant to delete. I'm going to have that trigger a Saga, which will delete it from our database and then fetch the updated list and update our reducer. So let me go make a Saga for delete plant. New Saga, I'll register it. Take every. The action type is delete plant, and I'm going to name the function delete plant. I'll go make that Saga. And it takes in an action. And we care about it because we're going to need the payload. I'm going to try doing some cool stuff. And if it fails, I'm going to catch the error. And then I will console log the error. Error deleting plant. And the cool stuff I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do an Axios delete call. So I'm going to yield axios.delete. And the URL is /API/plants/the ID. And we know we're sending the ID to this as the payload. So I'm going to do action.payload. Since here, when we click on the button, the payload is the plant ID. It's just the number. Here, the action payload is the number. I can put it right into the URL here. And if that works, I'll update the reducer next. So let me see if that works. Let me go ahead and click the button on AABBB and see if it disappears. It won't disappear from the DOM yet because I haven't updated the reducer, but if I come back here and refresh, it disappeared. If I delete BBBB, I see my delete plant action ran and BBBB disappeared. So that tells me my Saga is working. My Saga is making the Axios call and that's working. So after it's done, I want to go update the reducer with what's in the database. And I can do that by dispatching an action of type fetch plants. So now I should see if I delete something, not only does it disappear from the database, but the UI updates right away. This is when I would try it out with real data, or something similar. Plant name, plant kingdom, plant body, plant order, plant family, plant sub family, and plant genus. Add new plant. I see the name show up. In the database, everything's in the right column. If I click delete, it disappears from the DOM because it disappeared from the database and we repulled what was in the database. All right. I whizzed through that super fast. It was a ton to cover in an hour. I apologize for it, but we'll have a recording of it. Is there anything anybody wants to ask about or talk about with it? I would imagine that it was just too much too fast, but I wanted to make sure y'all got some more eyes on this and got a chance to see a live solve for it. All right, then let's do this. Let's do a 15-minute break. And when we come back, we'll dive into something that hopefully